In business, relationship is really everything. One thing that's huge for all of us is that we work a 4-day work week. We don't come in on Fridays. Something else that we think a lot about that is often unfortunately left out of conversations about sustainability is scale. Try and always stop and think carefully. Is there a way that smaller can be better?
But when it comes to business, passion is really not all that is needed. Passion alone cannot pay the bills.
We need to run a healthy business. The numbers have to make sense. It's not a charity project. There's really a link between environmental sustainability and economic sustainability.
What's your leadership style?
Oh, I feel like you should, if you really want the answer, you should ask someone else. Okay, there's somewhere we want to be. We don't have the money in hand. What's a creative solution? What's a way that we can get there?
Welcome to the Business for a Better World podcast. This podcast is sponsored by the Purchase Factory Limited.
If someone who knows absolutely nothing about sustainable fashion walked up to you in the street and this person asked you what you do for a living, what would you say, considering that they know absolutely nothing about sustainable fashion?
I don't usually lead a conversation about what I do with the sustainability angle. I think, it's such a generic question that I will say, I'm in the fashion business. Maybe I'll say we do hand batik. And then I kind of would rather let them ask whatever their follow-up question is. Because I feel like everyone has I've been in the fashion industry in different ways for a long time, and everyone has opinions, and every single person has a relationship to clothing. So even if I want to talk about it with them more, I kind of let them take it in the direction that is interesting to them, if that makes sense.
So, assuming you started another business that's totally out of the fashion industry, what aspects of Osei-Duro would you carry into that new organization? What do you do in Osei-Duro currently that you'd also do in that organization, irrespective of the fact that it has nothing to do with fashion or clothing?
Oh, question. I think one of the things that's most valuable to me about the way we run our business is our relationships. So the way that we engage with people, the trust that we build, whether it's with people who are maybe selling fabric to us, or doing our shipping, or working in the office. I think what I've learned is that for me in business, relationship is really everything. I think there's a couple pieces to it. Communication obviously is part of that. If you want to have good trust, you have to have good communication. We have to have consistently meet the expectations that we set. And then also we can be really intentional about who we build our relationships with. Who do I want my suppliers to be? If there's someone who we don't share our ethics about how we do business, then I can choose not to do business with them. Or if I have a mandate that I specifically want to do business with women, or I specifically want to do business within the continent or within West Africa, then I can choose those relationships to build my business around.
Sustainability is a big word. Like you even said when you were responding to the very first question, sustainability means so many things to different people, and there are different layers to it. So some fashion brands, they focus on ethical sourcing. Some are more concerned about zero waste. Others focus on using less chemicals during production, maybe using lesser dyes or dyeing lesser. Some other fashion brands, they focus on labor practices. Some choose to put more effort on promoting artisanal crafts and all of that. What I want to know is, what aspect of sustainability does Osei-Duro focus on, and why?
Okay. Our aim is to be able to have a positive effect in all of these different areas, but I think it's really important to recognize them individually and work on them individually, and acknowledge where you're further along and maybe where you have more to still do. Because I think for everybody in the industry, the default is not necessarily sustainable. So you have to kind of know that you're moving from the default place to where you want to be. I think for us, we've really come a long way in the labor area, which for us means that we have very direct relationships with everyone who produces our clothing. We spend time in the spaces where our clothing is made, and so that means we know the people who are doing the sewing, we know the people who are doing the dyeing. We have conversations with them about money and about scheduling, and it means that it's a dialogue about what's possible for them. For instance, the sewers might come to us with a feedback that it would be a lot easier to do this collar if we did a French seam instead of overlock. So we're really happy to take feedback from everybody, and that we have found that helps to build what feels like an equal relationship. And then within the team that is directly employed by Osei-Duro, we've put a lot of effort into having just being a really pleasant place to work. So one thing that's huge for all of us is that we work a 4-day work week. We don't come in on Fridays, and that is really a big shift for as far as like life-work balance. Gives all of us more time with our families or whatever our other passions may be, and just for rest as well. And we have really found that we're just as productive within the 4 days. It was something we started during COVID because we realized that we were kind of trying to keep busy, and why not just at least reduce the days? And then we've found since then that we haven't felt the need to bring back a 5th work day in the week. But beyond that, we have paid maternity leave. We have free childcare on site at our headquarters. We have medical benefits. We have savings incentives. We have constant trainings, which could be anything from first aid to professional development to creative workshops. We're always trying to kind of like enrich ourselves. Occasionally we'll do what in Ghana is often referred to as a keep fit program, basically just meaning some exercise. And we have frequent reviews as well. So there's a lot of communication about how everyone feels about how everything is going. So people your superior reviews you review your superior. Mm-hmm. And we really built up a culture in the office of, I think, open communication. So everyone has input. There's room for everyone to share ideas. When we name our prints, everyone gets involved in that, which is a fun process. We've also had people who are not part of the design department bring designs, and we've produced those, which has been really fun. And in that case, we treat them as an outside contractor, so they're given a fee. So I think just being the human element for us is huge, which comes down to the labor part of it. I think something else that we think a lot about that is often unfortunately left out of conversations about sustainability is scale. Mm-hmm. Because we work with artisans, we inherently there are limitations to scale for us, but we could choose to, bring in a huge piece of investment, for instance, and build a huge facility to industrialize the hand dyeing that we do, in order to grow and become a much bigger company. And we try and be really, really intentional about how big do we need to be? How big do we want to be? Bigger is not necessarily better. I think capitalism assumes that more is better, and I think that's the crux of the whole problem with fast fashion. And so we try and always stop and think carefully. Is there a way that smaller can be better? Is there a way that horizontal growth can be better than as opposed to vertical growth? So just kind of questions about structure and size are really important to us. We also focus on sourcing. So we source whatever we can in the region as far as fabric. We've just sourced a really nice cotton from Nigeria, which we're really excited about. We've been buying some cotton from India and some cotton in Ghana, but just from within West Africa. And so this is us buying directly within the region, but not in Ghana, which is a first for us. So that feels really good. We don't ever use synthetic fabrics. The rayon that we source is lensing certified, which means that it's gone through a really rigorous certification process to make sure that the trees that are used are renewably harvested and grown. So I would say the fabric sourcing and labor are big ones for us.
Do you mind sharing more on the aspects of horizontal and vertical growth? Because oftentimes we see a lot of brands, even non-fashion brands, often get it wrong. There's always this chase for doubling the annual revenue by next year. We want to triple the annual revenue. It's always a thing with most organizations. Chances are, if you approach most business people, most CEOs, and you ask them, what are your goals? The first thing they're going to tell you is, we want to increase our customer base, and we want to sell maybe double the amount of this particular product that we sell. Let's say, for example, if they sell pens and in a year they are selling 1,000 pieces of pens, they may say in the next year they would want to triple, or they would want to double that, right? That's more like vertical growth. So how or what do you think is the challenge with most business people when it comes to embracing horizontal growth? Why is it always a big deal?
I mean, I think it's just an assumption. I think it's never questioned. I think business schools all assume it. If you go and take a college class on business, even if you're not a business student, there's an assumption that more is bigger, and a lot of times the math also, there's a certain size at which I think it's called economies of scale. Your overhead is relatively fixed. Your rent doesn't necessarily go up when you sell more pens, and so your profit can be higher, right? So the idea is that it's going to cost you a certain amount no matter how many you sell just to exist as a business. So if you can sell double as many, like, you will still have a cost of goods, but you'll be making much more profit on top of your overhead or your fixed cost. And that is certainly true, but I think for us, we've realized that there is a comfort zone where we are good. We're clearing our overhead, we're clearing our cost of goods, and we're able to all pay ourselves comfortably. And we don't really need to be much bigger than that. And if we can be there, then we can happily focus on being better, which to me means being more efficient, maybe being more creative. We can also focus on, and part of being more efficient means using everything, right? So if we have fabric scrap, a big thing for us over the last few years has been like this huge popularity of anything we make using our offcuts or our scrap. So if we dye, we'll dye 4 yards to make a dress, and we'll be left with all the pieces once the dress is cut out. And we put so much work into the hand dyeing that we've always, the very beginning, we've been like, no, we can't throw these. So we have like a whole room where all the pieces are just sitting. And we've always done different things with them. Sometimes we would send them to quilters, and they would make patchwork quilts. Or friends would use them. I have a friend who produces dried fruit here, and she would use them to like send packages and kind of wrap things. They're beautiful. So there's a lot you can do with them. Artists use them for different projects. We have another friend who used them to do workshops with children on mask making. So they would have little different pieces of fabric and glue them onto the mask. Just all different kinds of, and it's been really fun to see where the scraps end up. But what we realize is that for minimal additional cost and minimal additional effort, we can do our own patchwork and produce limited edition clothing and products, and that does really, really well for us. I think people love the idea that this is kind of this historical remnant of past collections. It changes all the time because obviously the prints change over time. So if you buy the patchwork this year, it's going to look different from the patchwork next year. It has such a rich story behind it that's done really, really well for us. So that for me is a really nice example of like a horizontal growth. It's a new product, but it reinforces our existing mandate of sustainability, and it's really been a hit with customers. Another thing that I would describe as horizontal growth for us has been artist residencies. So we've had mostly just word of mouth. We've had different people come stay with us, mostly, though not always. Some from within Ghana, some from other countries, and we produce something together. So we encourage them to use the scraps. They don't have to. Sometimes it ends up being a product that we put on the website. Sometimes it ends up being a piece of music or a painting or some sculpture. Like it can even be a non-physical product. So that has injected a lot of just creativity into our space and kind of this ethos of experimentation that has always been a focus for us gets kind of renewed when we get to do that kind of thing. And that's not necessarily a direct money maker. You can't really, I think in a sense it falls under the category of like storytelling or branding or marketing. It's really hard to quantify the value of something like that, but the connection, it ripples out. The connections are countless, and we at this point our customer is very invested in those kind of stores, and so it's valuable to us to have growth in kind of all these different tangential directions.
All right, thank you so much, Molly. This is an answer to those of you who are still wondering what horizontal growth is all about and how maybe you can start considering it. We may have a special talk around horizontal growth sometime in the podcast. For now, we just have to move it. So back to you, Molly. Some time ago, the All Foundation, and I know they still do that currently, so I know they have this initiative that's called Peak Volumes. And they do this with the aim of getting fashion brands to open up on the number of clothes that they make yearly. Have you nominated any brand to participate?
So we participate in this campaign. I think we've done it for 3 years. It's been big for 2 years. And have we nominated any brands? I would have to look back into it. I think that there's the obvious huge brands like the H&M, Nike, brands that we think of as just like the biggest brands in the world. But I think for me, when I looked through their list of all the brands that had published their volumes, I was really interested in kind of the smaller and mid-sized brands. I think it's really interesting to see what people who I think of as my peers, or maybe brands where I'm like, oh, we're not that much different from them. I'm like, because even people who you have a sense that you're on the same scale, without actually knowing volume, it's really hard to have any sense of what numbers look. And all of us who are privately owned businesses don't have legal obligations to report any numbers. So it starts to give you a sense of, okay, this is how these people might be running their business.
I would say that when I first saw what the All Foundation was doing, I really liked it, especially the fact that they would go out to the water areas and they would literally try as much as possible to pack out as much wasted clothing as they can from the water. So you see them retrieving clothing that people have thrown away, and I think most of this clothing come as a result of fast fashion overproducing just too many things, or the second-hand clothings when they come in, and most of them I really don't understand how they move second-hand clothing. They tend to sometimes push out the ones that are just so destroyed that nobody wants to wear, and they just dump it. And so at the end of the day, these things most times end up in the water side, and I see the All Foundation, they're doing a lot of cleanup, and there's this thing they always publish every month. They publish the top 20 or the top 10 brands that they found most by the waterside. So they look at the labels and then they count it. And it's really surprising to see that it's some of the most loved and most popular brands that are always having the clothes end up there. Now, we really can't say why people are throwing them away or throwing them to the waterside, but whatever the matter is, we just know that we overbuy. And then, of course, there's also the aspect of overproduction, which again brings us to the subject of vertical growth versus horizontal growth. In September, we organized a workshop that we called Grow Your Sustainable Fashion Brand Profitably. One of the reasons we had the workshop was because lots of sustainable fashion brands run on passion. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing for people to be very passionate about what they do, but when it comes to business, passion is really not all that is needed, right? So we see a lot of business people, even outside the fashion space, they're so focused on being sustainable that they do not consider the aspect of financial stability, how to be profitable. So as time progresses, they run out of finances, and eventually the part of the story that we do not like, they get to shut the business down because passion alone cannot pay the bills. So you have been operating Osei-Duro for 15 years alongside your partner. What do you have to say about prioritizing environmental sustainability and financial stability?
It's really not easy. We realized really early on that for us those two things are really connected. Like if the business is not healthy economically, we can't help anyone, environmentally or in any other way. So we need to run a healthy business. The numbers have to make sense. It's not a project for us. It's fine if someone wants to do things that way, but that's a different structure. So we realized that there's really a link between environmental sustainability and economic sustainability. I think that, again, you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be careful, and you have to take your time and make decisions. One thing I can think of is that for quite a long time, we use we have to pack each garment in plastic in order to ship it to our distributor, which is in the United States. We love the idea of just putting it in paper, but the fact of the matter is that packages get wet and garments get damaged, and we can't afford economically to have a whole box of clothing get ruined on their way to before they've even sold. So we have to pack them in something that's waterproof, and we use these non-recyclable, non-biodegradable, just basic packing bags for years. Finally, we reached a point where we're now we're in a position economically where we can replace these. What are our options? And it turns out it's a very young industry, this idea of compostable or biodegradable packing bags. But it does exist, but you're paying a premium. So we pay about 3 times what we used to pay for the packing bag to have these ones that literally will dissolve in hot water. But they work. They do what we need them to do. And so that was an economic. We had to be at the right place economically to be ready to do that. And we had to be, gentle with ourselves about the fact that we needed to use this inferior system until we could financially afford it. Something else that we were finally able to do was switch from air shipping of our fabric to Ghana to sea shipping. And that also, we had to reach a point economically where we could afford to buy a larger volume of fabric, because that's where the costing adds up to put it on a boat. But I think for us it's been about kind of, if you want to call it, playing a long game and knowing that there are some things that we're not going to be able to afford to do right away, but that they are priorities as soon as we can afford to do them. And I think sometimes you just have to figure out where to make compromises. We didn't pay ourselves for a long time, and at a certain point we were like, okay, neither of us can afford to live like this, because the business is now taking up all, it was a side project for a couple years, and we both had other income. But then at a certain point, we had to make the switch. And we had to start paying ourselves something tiny just so that we could stop doing other work and we could focus on the business. So I think each brand has to figure out for themselves what the priorities are and when they can afford to compromise and where, if that makes sense.
Very much, it does make sense. And what you said that really hit me, and I would want to put a lot of emphasis here for you, the listener, is be gentle with yourself. Sustainability is very, very huge, if that's the right word to use. There are so many layers to being sustainable, there's so many perspectives to being sustainable. Do very well the little that you can do. You cannot be sustainable all completely in one day, and there's really nothing as a perfectly sustainable business. There are always better alternatives to being not better alternatives, but better ways to do things more sustainably. So if at this moment you cannot afford, say for example, to get very durable packaging or a more environmentally friendly packaging, just like Molly, or yours could just be about anything. You don't have to force yourself, or you don't have to consider maybe closing down because we cannot get this kind of packaging right now and we are a sustainable brand. Do the very best that you can do and be gentle with yourself. As the business grows, you will be able to afford more options that are sustainable. But for now, stick to your guns, embrace the areas that you were already sustainable as you work toward being much more sustainable. Key thing here is to be gentle on yourself. Thank you so much, Molly, for that. I would add that to my arsenal of short, punchy, what do I call them? Short, punchy, motivational quote or something.
I would add, I'll add something too that someone told me. I have a friend who does sustainability for like big, huge fast fashion brands, and what she is always pushing for anybody who asks, especially these big brands, is transparency around your sustainability efforts.
Yeah.
So what she'll say is, rather than glossing over and saying, "Oh, we're sustainable," be specific. Here's the ways in which we're the most sustainable. Here's the ways in which we're still working on getting better. And here's the timeline that we want to do it by. So you let your customer know your goals. We're planning that by next year, we're going to be shipping everything by sea, or we're planning that by next year we're going to only be using natural dyes or whatever. We're planning that by next year every single person in our supply chain is going to earn a fair wage. So that because then you can be held accountable. If you just kind of make a general statement, then there's nothing to grab onto. But if you can be specific, then it's okay to say, here's where we think we're falling short, and here's where we want to improve on it. Like, it's always better to be honest and clear and specific than to do what I think we all know of as greenwashing.
Thank you so much, Molly. Thanks a lot. You literally summed up this entire thing. Like, it just sums up everything, every single thing that has to be said as regarding the subject. Thank you so much. Here in Nigeria, there's something we say when somebody says something that really hits. We say chop knuckle. Here we chop knuckle. Thank you. That's more like saying cheers or a toast or giving a thumbs up. So thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Now, there's something I have observed about Osei-Duro, the clothings and how they are modeled. Your models, they are very much like the everyday woman. They usually don't have much makeup on, and when I look at their poses, sometimes I imagine that they may actually be the customer. I'm like, maybe it's just the customer who thought of sending pictures of their outfit, because when you look at those models, they don't give that aspirational pose that we see from unquote supermodels. Is that done intentionally?
Yes, definitely. For us, it's really important that I don't know, it just needs to feel relatable. I think it needs to feel attainable. I love fashion. I studied fashion. I've been interested in fashion since I was a child. I love looking at fashion photography and magazines. And I think that there's a place for glamour, certainly. There's a place for aspiration. But for us, we find that it's just more interesting to treat the model almost like a character. Like she's a full, nuanced human being. She's not just a hanger for the clothing. She gets to be flawed. She gets to have a full range of emotions. I think it's a fine line. I mean, I don't want to pretend that we're presenting people ever in like a bad light. We always want them to look good, and many of our models are professional models. But I think having there be some element of realism to the photography has felt to us like an important way to kind of broaden the conversation that happens around fashion. I think to some extent this has grown for us since the advent of Instagram, because we as a brand actually predate Instagram. But we got really good feedback from customers once we had an active community on Instagram. People wanting to see themselves, right? Especially plus size customers. Okay, great, you do size extra large, but I want to see it on myself. I want to see it on someone my size. And what would it look like on it? And it's not only that. What if it would look like on someone short? What would it look like on someone with different proportions? So that everyone who's shopping online can really understand what it's going to feel like for them to be in the clothes themselves. And so I think as soon as we started getting that feedback, that reinforced for us that, okay, it's important to continue to show like a really wide range of model.
Over the years, working with different businesses, there's always this question of what are other brands going to think about us? I mean, what are people going to think about us? Now, most times, when people come to consultation and they ask this question, by other people, they do not mean their customers inclusive. You understand? So it could be a branding consultation and you're trying to explain something about how the brand should be because of the kind of customers that they're targeting. But it's always a challenge for the other person to embrace the fact that this is what the kind of customers they want, need, and that's how the brand needs to go. So there's always this consideration of, so what are non-customers going to say about it? They're going to say our brand is not so stylish, or is not so like this, or not like, kind of high class and all of that. But from what you have shared, it hits home one key fact. What the customers want is often what should be served them. At least in this situation, I'm not saying like generally there are always limitations to statements like this and even observations like this. But the thing is, being able to embrace the fact that these are the kind of customers you want to serve, and serving this kind of customers means relating in this way or branding in this way. Not everybody is able to embrace that reality and understand that, okay, we have chosen this customer segment, this is what they want, and we have to go in that light. So was it a challenge for you and your partner? Did you struggle embracing the fact that your ideal customer, the kind of customers you were targeting, they really don't, not like they're not aspirational. I know most of them hold very significant position in society, but they're really not all that overly concerned or obsessed with what we call luxury in the sense of glamour or looking out for overly high fashion. Was it difficult for you to accept the fact that this is what your kind of customers wanted, and you had to rebrand and even ensure that the photography was exactly that?
No. I mean, yeah, in a word, no. I think for us, the customers in many ways are like ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We are both people with fashion backgrounds who are kind of possibly more interested. I don't know about more interested. We are as interested in ideas around fashion as we are in fashion.
Oh.
We're both definitely like into fabric, into fit, into color. We love fashion history. We love costume. Like every aspect of fashion is definitely interesting to us. We'll have conversations about red carpet outfits, who was successful, who was not. But I think that there's what we have found we have in common with our customer is a really strong interest in ideas. So whether that is fashion history, whether it is how politics, things like race and culture intersect with fashion, conceptual fashion, fine art. There's a lot of, design conversations. There's a lot of kind of maybe more cerebral thinking that happens around fashion beyond shopping, which is fine to also think about that. And so I think in that sense, we really relate to the customer. And I don't think we're the most cutting edge, trendy brand in the world. And I don't think that we want to be or intend to be. The audience that we appeal to is occasionally very fashionable and is occasionally just someone who wants to wear something sustainable and comfortable to work that she feels good in. We certainly work hard to make sure that our fits are flattering, but it always needs to be comfortable. I mean, one of the kind of my elevator pitch about what Osei-Duro's value is that I'll often say that an Osei-Duro dress should be something that you can wear to a wedding, feel spectacular in, spend the night on the couch after partying at the wedding in the dress, feel comfortable sleeping on the couch in the dress, wake up the next morning and roll out to brunch still in the dress and still feel good and appropriate in the dress. So it really needs to be pajama level comfort, casually great, and also something you could wear to a special occasion. And if you're going to try and do all of that in one dress, you're not also going to be on the cover of Vogue, most likely, although who knows, it could happen. You're probably also not most likely going to be in a luxury category. And that's fine with us.
One thing that has made me smile while you're talking about this is how much you just know what you are and what you are not. I think this is where a lot of businesses struggle. They're trying to be this and they're trying to be that. They see another brand tomorrow and they're like, yeah, we want to be like the brand. They see another one and we want to be like the brand. So there's always a confusion about their identity. When we talk about identity, most times we just tend to think about our identity as humans, but even our businesses need their own identities. And when we understand what the identity of this business is and what it's not, I think it really helps a lot, because looking at the trajectory of Osei-Duro over the past 15 years, everything, it seems as if from the very onset there was a complete guide on what this brand should be and how it should go. It has literally been on same track. Yes, there's been changes, but those changes still enable the brand to be on the right track. It's quite a beautiful one.
Thank you. I mean, it did take us a while to figure it out. I would say we spent the first 4 or 5 years kind of fumbling around. We were very tiny.
Mm-hmm.
We both do the design and our taste is quite different. So we were trying to figure out how do we design around each other, and figuring out, where do we want to hang, what stores do we want to hang in, whose clothing do we want to hang next to, what's the appropriate price point, kind of what is the age of our customer, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were self-funded and we were quite tiny for quite a while, I feel like we had the luxury of making a lot of low-risk mistakes and discoveries of just kind of trying things and being like, okay, this is a dead end for us, or okay, this is going to go somewhere for us. It's not, I know a lot of people have a whole concept before they start a brand and they just execute the original concept. And I think for us, it was much more of an organic process of getting to know who we are as a brand and who our customers that kind of finds us.
Meanwhile, talking about your partner, what do you love most about her? Maryanne, that's her name, right?
Maryanne, yeah.
Maryanne, what do you love most about her?
I think that we are very well suited in that we are quite different, which makes us good partners. I am really a detailed person. I tend to be very zoomed in my focus. I'm very good at QCing a garment or editing a document. She is much more of a big picture, big ideas person. So she will often be the one who comes and says, we need to change strategy on this. I have an idea. What if we try this? I would say we share a work ethic. We share a willingness to be honest with each other, even when it's hard. We're both very dedicated, and we share an ethics around what we can't compromise on with the business. But as far as our actual, the way our brains function, I really appreciate the balance that the two of us bring to the table with our very different ways of thinking.
I'm so pleased to hear that, Molly. So pleased to hear that. Oftentimes, I see when people choose business partners, they tend to look out for people who are just like them in every way. But life doesn't require just one skill or one perspective, especially business. There are so many skills that you need to run a business successfully. So it's sweeter when one partner has this other set of skill and the other one has another set of skill. They just complement. But the problem oftentimes is knowing how to relate with each other so that these differences complement rather than detract. And I'm so happy. I mean, you and Maryanne, you both have been doing this for 15 years. It's so beautiful. Meanwhile, your initials, M and M. Whoa, Molly and Maryanne. Have you considered maybe doing something and calling it M and M, something of that sort?
When we first started, we had people be like, why is the brand not called Molly and Maryanne? And we were like, no, thank you. We haven't done it. We could.
Meanwhile, why the name Osei-Duro?
So when we started the business, we had a very lofty idea that we would move from place to place. We would do production in Ghana, maybe we'd go and do production in Egypt or India or Turkey or Morocco, places that have rich textile traditions. Maryanne had done a bunch of research and actually produced capsule collections on this huge trip that she went on. And after that trip, she approached me and was like, I would love to expand on this project I did. Do you want to come with me? First stop was Ghana. She had an old friend who was living here, and so it would be an easy, transition into being here. The language also made it easy for us as North Americans to come and be here. But what we quickly realized was that the places that we were looking at were places that had pretty limited infrastructure for brands to just dip into. India, to a great extent, you can just kind of phone in your orders and you can find middlemen. But none of the places that we were excited about the textiles have what you can get in China or Bangladesh, where you literally don't even have to go there. You just kind of give the work to somebody to do for you. So when we got here and we started, we realized that we needed to spend time here. We needed to be here. We needed to build our own infrastructure, essentially. And so we felt like we wanted to choose a Ghanaian name. And when we found Osei-Duro, I have to say we didn't know the meaning of the name. We have since learned the meaning, and I'm happy to say that it's a very positive meaning. Very powerful meaning, but we actually liked the name for its symmetry. The 4 letters and 4 letters, the starting and ending with the O, it looked neat, it felt neat, it felt balanced for us. Later, there were conversations about can you really own this name? This isn't your name. You know, you're foreigners in the place where you're making the clothing. What does it mean for like two white North Americans to come to Ghana and produce clothing and borrow a Ghanaian name? And we've had a lot of conversations about that with our team and with other people. As of yet, it hasn't felt like it's made sense to change it. Our team here in Ghana, who is all Ghanaian, feels strongly that at this point, this is our name. But we certainly recognize that it's borrowed. I have met a number of Osei-Duro people who were born with that name. And happily, those have all been very positive interactions. But yeah, Osei, it kind of means like honorable or powerful or almost like impenetrable. And Duro, I don't know about Nigeria, but in Ghana, the word medicine has a very broad application.
Okay.
It could mean anything from like mosquito spray to something you clean the floor with to an actual medicine that you take, you know, in your mouth for sickness. And it also includes this idea of magic. So anything that's kind of like a powerful medicine. So Osei-Duro is like honorable medicine or almost someone who magic cannot penetrate them. And we feel like, yeah, we're happy to have ended up with such a strong name.
Well, if you ask me, I think I can see ways that the name really relates with what the brand is doing.
Thank you. Yeah. We feel like we've grown into it, I guess, is kind of what's happened.
Very much. Honestly, at this point, I don't know, but inside of me, there's this kind of circular feeling. I mean, like as if something is moving in circles while you were talking about the name Osei-Duro and all of that. I felt like, I don't know if I would say that's what they call butterflies in my belly, but I'm not having that feeling in my belly. It's around my chest, just kind of as if it's expanding. I guess you were sowing a seed. I don't know what seed it is, but I know it's a good seed.
That's good. That's nice to hear. Thank you. I always like when can locate something physically in their body. That's a good sign.
I'm always very much observant of things going on inside of me, even if it's in my head.
Yeah, it's important.
Alright, so let's talk about leadership for a while. What's your leadership style?
Oh, I feel like you should, if you really want the answer, you should ask someone else. Someone who works with me.
Okay.
I try to give everyone a lot of agency. I try to really let everyone know that they are in a position to make decisions. There's responsibility that comes with that amount of freedom. Obviously, I'm not going to follow you around and make sure that you're staying on task all the time. I'm not going to be super critical of you as you do your job. But it gives you maybe it's an American style. It gives you a lot of room to figure it out. And I like to think I give people room to make mistakes, room to figure things out. I try my best not to micromanage. I do sometimes struggle when I see someone doing something that I know how to do it right. And it can be hard to kind of stop myself from just jumping in. But I think it's important to let people learn, but even as a parent, I've discovered this, to let people figure out for themselves how to do things. But I would say that we've successfully created a culture in our business where everybody has input. So for me, it's important that if I give you a task and you can see a reason why it should be different, you're comfortable saying so. And that's not always culturally what people have experienced in Ghana. There's a lot of kind of hierarchy being reinforced. And so I try to make sure that everybody feels that their opinion counts, and that their needs are considered, I guess, within our institution.
I learned that Osei-Duro now offers consultation services to other sustainable fashion brands. Let's talk about that for a while.
Yeah.
Why did you branch into consultation, and what gap are you trying to fill?
We have been asked for years to consult And for a long time, we were like, nah, we're busy enough as it is. It sounds like extra. And I think, I would say yes to, like, a student who's working on a student project, or someone who I really felt like I want to support them to grow in this industry. But what we realized at a certain point was that if we make it a service that we offer, then I guess we could still say no, but it makes it more realistic for us to fit it into what we're doing if it's a part of our business. It's, in a sense, it's part of this like horizontal growth idea, right? What else? What else are we? If we're already being asked for help, let's make it part of the business. And I think there's something nice for me I've been working in fashion since, I guess, for 20 years, since I finished my degree, my undergraduate degree. And so many people have helped me along the way. So many people have given me advice. There's so much that I do that I can still think of the person who told me how to do it. That there's something really nice for me about being able to pay that forward and to keep investing in other people and keep on sharing, because this is really an industry where you learn by doing. There's so many different ways of doing everything, and there isn't, even if you've gone to school, even if you've done training, you're still going to have to learn so much on the job. And so I think about everyone who's helped me, and it feels important to pass that along.
I specifically loved it when you said you learn by doing. Do you listen to Vusi?
Yeah, every business is different.
Do you listen to Vusi Thembekwayo?
No.
Okay. He's a South African. He's a South African venture capitalist. And there's this thing he always says. He says that if he gives someone a manual on how to swim, and the person read it for a very long time, say maybe a day or so, and then he takes this person and throws them into the water for the first time, he says the person is going to drown. And I totally agree with that. It is one thing to know how to do something, and a totally different thing to be able to doing it. Knowledge is different from action or implementation. And I feel like that is actually where a lot of businesses are stuck. Not that they do not know what to do, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to build processes for things and ensure that this thing can run over and over again and continue to deliver results. Just like things like the blue ocean strategy is very, very popular. It's something that anybody can access anywhere at any time. But there are not much blue ocean organizations out there. The information is there, but how to do it, that is the problem.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was the subject for another day. Let's not get overly pushed into that topic because it comes with a lot of weight. Well, as a business owner and a CEO, you know that, as a matter of fact, no matter how good-willing or well-intentioned a business is, if it's unable to generate substantial profit, it cannot continue to run and it cannot continue to make impact. You even said this when we started earlier talking about prioritizing environmental sustainability and financial stability too. So now let's break it down a little bit more on that particular subject. What challenges do you face in terms of revenue generation? Especially from the start, when you were starting, before you reached this level of economical stability. What were most of the financial challenges that you faced? And how were you able to, pull yourself and Maryanne, how were both of you able to run it through past those years till the 15th year currently?
Okay, I could talk for a long time about this. We started out with small savings from each of us. When we decided to create the business, we gave ourselves about 9 months, and we each made some life choices to reduce our expenses and to save as much as we possibly could. I don't mind saying We started the business with combined savings of about $15,000. And since then, we have never taken a bank loan. We've tried and we've not been offered one. I think as a small fashion business, we're not what a lot of banks are looking for. So we've kind of just grown as our resources have allowed. And what we have done some creative financing. So for instance, at one point we got a large purchase order from Anthropology, which is belongs to Urban Outfitters. They're a quite common store in malls in the U.S. And it was for us to do this order was like twice our usual production in an entire season, and this was just for one store. So we knew we were going to need money up front. But because we had the purchase order in hand, we were able to go to friends and family and say, okay, we need to borrow this amount of money. We'll offer you a very attractive return on what you've loaned us. And we were able to raise funds for production that way. We did that twice, actually. And it was great. It forced us to grow. We didn't make much money on those deals, but it did kind of bump the business up into the next level of production. We had to find a slightly bigger factory. We had to figure out a different way of sourcing fabric, all that kind of thing. It pushed us to grow. I think that trade shows can be really a struggle, and that's constantly changing. I mean, e-commerce has changed what trade shows are. Fast fashion has changed what trade shows are. But at the beginning, we definitely had some really kind of sad experiences where we spent all this money and we went to a trade show and no one came and looked and no one talked to us, and we were like, why did we even go and do that? And then we started stepping away from that system, and so we would pool our resources with 4 or 5 other small brands, and we would instead rent a storefront close by to where the trade show was happening, and we would create our own little showroom. So we would find brands where it wasn't a direct conflict of our product. Maybe someone doing jewelry, someone doing homeware, someone doing perfume, someone doing shoes, us doing clothing. And then we would know that all of our buyers were going to come and see everyone's products. And each brand, if we each had 10 appointments, and there were 6 of us, that's 60 appointments, and the space is small enough that every buyer is going to see every brand in that space. So those independent showrooms for us were a creative solution to just not being able to afford the high costs and the risk of the trade show, which didn't necessarily, sometimes they were great for us, but oftentimes they were out of reach financially. So I think if a lot of it has been, okay, there's somewhere we want to be, we don't have the money in hand, what's a creative solution? What's a way that we can get there without, that's maybe not the common way or not the normal route.
This very last thing you just shared about when you didn't have the resources to get something done and you have to think about a creative way to do it, which oftentimes is not the way it's done, or it's not the most popular way to do it. It's not the traditional way to do it or the conventional way to do it. Do you find it difficult to embrace the fact that, well, this is where you are at the moment. You're in point C and you need to get to point D, but then you don't have a conventional means to get to point D. Hence, you have to find something else that is within your means, and that is not usually the kind of thing that people would do when they want to get from C to D. Do you find it difficult accepting it and just saying, well, I'm being gentle on myself, this is where we are, we have to do this because we need to get to the next point? Did you have challenges around things like that?
I mean, maybe sometimes. I definitely have moments where I'm like, it would be easier if we just had financing, or it would be easier if we were owned by a parent company that could make those kind of decisions. But I think we're both very non-traditional people when it comes down to it. And I think there's another level on which we relish that we're going to do this our own way. We're going to build it our own way. We're going to do our own thing. We're not going to follow the crowd. There's a million brands that are going to do it this way. We're going to stand out in a sense because we are going to find a new way to do it.
And I think you really did stand out because when you say you wanted to reach your own way, I remember when I first bumped into Osei-Duro, I spent a lot of time on your website. Prior to that time, I hadn't reached out to you. We had never had a conversation, but I could already tell. Like I literally could feel like, well, even though I'm just perusing through a website, I could feel the soul. If that's the right word. Some people use the word energy. Some say vibe. Some say spirit. I prefer the word soul. I don't know why, but that's the word I prefer. But I could literally feel the soul of the human behind the brand. So, well, I guess doing it your way and finding creative alternatives when you didn't have the means to do it the conventional way turned out right. You are really different because
Thank you. That's a
Osei-Duro,
big compliment.
yeah, Osei-Duro does have a soul. We can actually say that Osei-Duro is living. Do you have any questions for me? Is there anything you'd like to ask?
I'm curious, like within the scope of the podcast, what is the range of like what are you looking for in the people that you interview? Are you intentionally looking for a wide range of people? Are you wanting only people who are focused on this? Like what makes you be like, ooh, this person, I want them on the podcast?
Okay. Okay. Meanwhile, first thing I'd like to say that it took a very long while before we found you, and every other person we have on our list. We usually sweat before we find the ideal people we want to be on our podcast. That's
Okay,
because. You
because
want to say something?
it's a process for you.
Very much. The podcast itself, it's not a standalone thing. The podcast
Right.
is an integral part of the brand, the Portio Satori. We are not just a consultation brand out there. Our major goal, our core purpose is to make this world much more better than we have met it. And I mean, what skills do we have? We understand how businesses run. We understand how to develop strategies that are specific to where a business is and can get them to where they're going, strategies that can be scaled. And most importantly, we even know how to ensure that the strategy can be executed, which is, I mean, often where a lot of businesses get it wrong. So we decided, well, we want to make the world good. This is the skill we have. So we're going to use this skill to work with businesses that are making a positive impact with their business. So when we were mapping out what the different aspects of the business would have, we just knew that there has to be an arm of the organization that can put more light on what good businesses are doing out there. There has to be a platform that can share the story, that can share the highlight of good things happening in the world because of humans like us who run businesses and run it the right way. So we thought about it. Okay, what is it going to be? Should we just do shout out to people? I'm like, no, shout out is really nothing. If you shout out, people don't know anything when you shout out. What are you shouting? So we decided to start a podcast. We decided, okay, it will be a podcast. You can even tell from the name, Business for a Better World Podcast. So we thought a podcast would be very nice. So we are going to look out for businesses that are impacting the world, not just fashion organizations, way out of fashion, as long as they are very intentional about ensuring that what they do not hurt people and do not hurt the planet. Well, we want to have them on board. We want them to share their story. We want them to talk about what they're doing. We want people to know about it. We want to spread the word about it so people understand that part of the problem we are facing in the world today is not only bad governance, there's also the aspect of bad businesses. People lose tons of money on yearly basis because there are businesses out there that sell fake food. They wouldn't use the right ingredients. They're going to add some artificial ingredients. If somebody who is already diabetic is going to eat this thing, they think they're eating organic food. They don't know that what they're eating is actually helping to destroy them the more. And so they end up spending more in the hospital. It's not like these things are mistakes. They are not mistakes. In most cases, the people who run those organizations, they are very much aware of what they are doing. And they are often the ones that come on press to tell you sweet, beautiful, well marinated lies about how their father was dying and they started this business so that other people's father wouldn't die. Meanwhile, they're actually killing fathers and killing sons and even killing daughters and wives, as a matter of fact. So such things exist. What we can do, the least we can do, is to ensure that people whose conscience are still alive, people who have decided that they are not going to go that route, the least we can do is to ensure that we spread their story. We have a lineup of different programs that will enable us to do this, but just like you said, we're being gentle with ourselves and doing as much as we have capacity to do at the moment. So again, this boils down to being sustainable environmentally and also being sustainable economically. This is as much as we can do right now, having a post-production team to ensure that this podcast can go out, they can travel as far as possible. It's going to make a change, even if we think it's not going to be much. People get to be aware of these things and they make better decisions. And they're able to question businesses, just like what the All Foundation is doing, which is very beautiful, very, very beautiful. So that's just it. That's just what the podcast is about. Your question is whether we interview just about everybody, right?
Yeah, like how do you select who you want to interview?
So we search. For now, things where we have a lot of focus on the fashion industry, we have our directory. So we just look at what's in the directory and then sometimes it takes up to 2 days to fetch information about brands, read about them, every single thing that has ever been published. We want to know. And then even sometimes there are so many brands we see that have claims to be sustainable. They put it up on their IG profile, in all their captions, they do hashtag eco fashion, but we don't have any tangible proof to say that these people are really sustainable. So again, we have spent say 48 hours trying to understand them. We don't see proof for what they're claiming. So at the end of the day, they cannot make it up to the podcast. So it's not just about knowing that people are sustainable. We want proof. We want to see proof. I told you, when I went to the website, I could see it was clearly outlined where this whole thing started, where it is at the moment, where it's headed, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are. It makes the whole thing very easy for one to understand. I wish every business would be able to express theirs in that manner. The only thing is, we just hope they don't start lying about it.
Yeah, I think it's on the businesses to figure out, how do I make it really clear here? How do I it's my responsibility to provide the proof that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. A very tedious, not so sweet process. The sweetest aspect of the podcast is having the actual conversation like this and then promoting it. Every other thing that comes before this part, oh my god, it's tedious. But we have to do it because it's part of what makes us the Osei-Duro. It's just part of why we exist. So with this, Molly, we have come to the end of this podcast, and I would say that it's really been a blessing having this conversation with you. Each time I speak to people like you and you reiterate your value and your commitment to doing business the right way, I just feel much more hopeful about what tomorrow holds. I just know that, well, it's a good thing to know that there is another human out there who has the same values as we do. So we're never standing alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much,
it's encouraging.
Molly.
Thank you too.
Did you know that 73% of customers say that they cannot be loyal to a brand if they do not share any emotional connection with that brand? What this means is that if your team doesn't know how to emotionally connect with customers before, during, and after their purchase, you risk losing those customers to competitors. So the question now is, what barrier is holding your organization from emotionally connecting with customers, and how can you evoke the right emotions to inspire loyalty and get referrals from customers to grow your business? You can schedule a call with a Potio representative to learn more. You'll find a link in the description. For now, let's get back to the podcast.